there seems to be a gap in just methods of assessment for a person, the average person. How do they find out where they need work to then narrow down their search for the right tool? Is there a way that people can take some sort of assessment or have someone review their performance through certain tasks to give them a blueprint of what they should be doing?
So that's a beautiful question. So since the beginning, we tracked two different things. Well, we have been talking about interventions. Mm-hmm. What can we do, either from a lifestyle perspective or technologies to improve anything? But at the same time, we also were tracking and analyzing the field of assessments, because we thought, hey, over time, those two are going to match, are going to come together. So maybe you have an assessment, and the assessment is going to help in two ways. One, to have like a baseline, and then you can assess yourself maybe every year, and you can see what improves, what gets worse. Similar to an annual physical checkup, like an annual brain checkup. And by the way, people, when we ask surveys, people love this idea. People are desperate to do that. Doctors and public governments hate the idea because they think that's going to lead to a lot of false diagnostics and false knowledge. So it's going to be very interesting to see actually what happens. So the assessments are very useful from the baseline perspective, from a diagnostic perspective. Say, for example, Alzheimer's. So the way Alzheimer's is diagnosed today is a disaster. It makes absolutely no sense, even at a basic level. So imagine I take you a typical assessment with a doctor, and then takes maybe 20, 30 minutes, and I'm comparing your cognitive performance in that test to people, maybe in your age group, at your education level. So I'm comparing you with the norm. And then I say, no, you're completely fine, so bye-bye. Have a nice day. Okay. But maybe you now are above or at your norm, but maybe last year you were way higher. Maybe you have, because all your life you have done many more physical and mental exercise, or genetically you were. So they don't see the decline. And the decline is what would help detect, wow, this is concerning. Even if you are at the average, you used to be way higher. So many people who are above average at the cognitive level are completely misdiagnosed. They are not diagnosed. They should be diagnosed. They should be treated, but nothing is happening. If there was that baseline, and then you could track yourself over time, or the doctor could track you over time, this would become much more obvious. Or even another big problem, especially in the US, is with people as they get older, they take more and more medicaments. And medicaments are tested for safety, typically at the physical level, but there's very little knowledge about what's the cognitive impact of typical medicaments. So what happens is that many people take drugs for whatever. It can be diabetes, can be anything else you want. And that makes them lose memory, lose attention, they get frustrated. So it has a lot of mental negative side effects. And they have no way to prove that to a doctor, and the doctor has no way to see that. So if there was this, but pharma companies, to their credit, are starting to realize this opportunity. If we had some kind of cognitive assessment that people take before they take the drug, and then they take the medicament, that way the doctor can monitor the cognitive effects of that medication. And if there is some red flag, well, maybe change the dose or change the medication. Anyway, long story short, but assessments are going to be extremely useful just as assessments to track that baseline. Second, for the diagnosis, as we just described, and we can go deeper. And third, back to your question is, well, once we have an assessment, if we want to do it deeper and more comprehensive, then maybe we can detect particular weaknesses that maybe can match into what intervention or interventions may make more sense for you. So that doesn't still exist today. It's going to take a while to develop. The closest to this framework is what neuropsychologists do. But neuropsychologists typically help people who have severe problems, either a concussion or Parkinson's or trauma, and then they do very expensive and takes many, many hours to do a good evaluation, and then they try to help rehabilitation. But I mean, there's going to be a way to automate all that. Maybe not for the same patients, but for many people who right now have no access whatsoever to something like that, because again, it's too expensive and too specialized. So the value of technology and data analytics and machine learning and all these things is going to be that once data is captured, we can analyze it better and then maybe see what are the digital signatures that, we can talk about that in a second, help predict either problems or response to interventions.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, in that area, it's called digital biomarkers. And there are some companies, very credible companies, doing very interesting work, saying, well, there's different ways to gather data from people. One can be even their smartphone use. There's a variable called typing cadence. So how quickly and accurately you type.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is using the smartphone or a keyboard at a certain baseline, and then suddenly the accuracy and the speed declines significantly, that itself is not a diagnostic, but it's a significant red flag that means something. So again, either the person or a doctor can analyze that. So there's sort of interest now and work on digital biomarkers, or we can have some EEG, like let's read brain waves of a particular person in a particular reading that helps us predict whether that person, if he or she is depressed, is more likely to respond to a depressant A or depressant B, or to cognitive behavioral therapy, which is another methodology, or to biofeedback. So there's a huge amount of interest in all these different areas of technology. Again, and the vision in the future will be that those areas are better connected and one thing leads to the next, but that things take a while. So nothing is so well integrated. So
yeah.